Hi guys, Emma here at the Vlog Lady. Today I'm going to be doing a different kind of video. It is October. It's my favourite time of the year because mainly of Halloween. I just love everything scary. I love to scare myself, and all my life I think I've been predisposed to having weird experiences just because that's the kind of person that I am, and I imagine that a lot of my subscribers are like that because of their interests. A lot of people who are subscribed to this channel for shows like Twin Peaks or Dark may be the same kind of person that I am, sort of willing to have an open mind about experiences in life, and quite often I'm more likely to sway to the side of something supernatural is happening to me rather than say it's a normal experience and warped by my imagination, right? So today I thought I'd do a video where I count down 5 creepy things that have happened to me just mainly for a bit of Halloween fun. So, number 1, blue velvet. Some of you may have seen that I have a couple of dogs, and last year I was walking with them in my local graveyard. It is a graveyard that has an old section and a new section, and I was walking in the old section, which also is a place where you can park the diggers which dig the graves, like the machines, and they also have a big pile of soil which they use to cover the graves in one particular area. And I was quite near to the machinery area when my dog suddenly got the smell of something in the grass. He pulled me really fast towards something, and I looked down into the grass and saw what looked to me to be a skinned finger. I was immediately reminded of David Lynch's Blue Velvet, where the main character finds a severed ear, and I was horrified, and I was about to take a closer look and possibly shriek when my dog leapt forward, grabbed the skinned finger and swallowed it whole. My dog has a history of swallowing gross things. When he was a puppy, he swallowed a dead rat whole, and I had to pull it by the tail right the way back out of his throat. So when he swallowed the finger, I was pretty disgusted and freaked out. When I discussed this story later with family members, one family member said to me, "Calm down, that sounds like it was a chicken leg." However, the experience was a little jarring, and in my mind what I saw was a skin finger. Number 2, grandma's here. When I was a little girl, I had a childhood friend, and I was staying over at her house one night. I was in the bedroom with my childhood friend and her sister, and we were talking about their grandmother. Their grandmother had died many years before, but the girls had really been missing her, and they had spent a lot of time with her growing up when they were younger, and she was almost like a second mother to them. So they were talking about what gifts their grandmother had given them in terms of how she treated them and how she had educated them. And my friend's sister suddenly said, "Do you see that painting up on the wall?" And I looked up and there was a painting of a landscape, and I said yes, and she said, "I hang that there because my grandmother gave it to me." And suddenly the painting flung itself off the wall and landed on the ground with a crash. We all jumped out of our skins and looked at one another. I wasn't sure how the girls were going to react, but my friend's sister got really upset, but then she calmed down and she realized that her grandmother was still there looking out for her. Sorry about that. Number 3, friendly Harry. About 15 years ago I was working at an entertainment venue, and when I first started working there I was told by the other members of staff that the place was haunted. The building was a Grade 1 listed building, so it was a Victorian age era, I think. It was really old, and everything inside the building looked as it did back when it was first created and built. And there was also a lot of artwork and literature on the walls of the place that made it feel very antiquated and almost as if you'd stepped back in time when you entered the building. When the other staff members told me about the ghost, they told me that they called him Friendly Harry. I thought that it was a big joke, to be honest, and didn't really pay much attention to what they told me about him. But one staff member told me, if you hear anything or see anything, don't worry, it's just Friendly Harry. So one night I was at work and I was by myself in a corridor at the end of the night in an area that adjoined a bar. There was a partition between the corridor and the bar where there were windows and curtains, and you could hear what was going on in the bar from where I was. So it was the end of the night and everyone had cleared up, and I was waiting to be given permission to leave my station. All of the other areas around me had already cleared out of other staff members, so it was very quiet. All of a sudden, I saw the curtains move in the bar through the glass windows. And I thought, somebody must still be in there. That is strange because I saw everyone leave. Then I heard glasses start moving around, and it basically sounded like there was a full bar in action. Like the bar was still going. I started to get a little bit scared, so I slowly made my way round to the bar and looked inside, where there was nobody. I realized at this point that I must have been hearing Friendly Harry, and I went back to my fellow staff members and told them that I had heard someone in the bar, and they all shrugged their shoulders and said, don't worry, it was just Friendly Harry. Number 4, the memory of atoms. In my lifetime, I have thought that I might have seen several ghosts, and I don't know if I have or whether I just have a really active imagination. I'm open to the idea of them being spirits, and I do think that from my experiences, I do believe that there is something strange going on after we die. One reason for this is because I have noticed that when people I know have died, or when animals that I have owned as pets have died, things happen that suggest that a life form of some sort still exists, even after their body appears to be dead. Last year, I lost my pet dog. She was a little black terrier who you may have seen in some of my videos. She died really suddenly of a heart attack, and she was a very needy dog. She was a rescue dog, and she used to sleep with me. She was prone to being cold because of a heart condition that she'd had for a long time, and so she used to get into my bed beside me and crawl under the cover. After she died, for about 2 or 3 weeks, every single night it seemed like something was jumping onto my bed and coming into the spot where she used to lie. There used to be almost an indent appear in the bed. And my other dog, who was there with me on the bed, often looked over to the spot when there seemed to be this depression in the mattress. Long before this, I had come up with the idea that atoms, or something in our bodies that exists in our bodies, has a memory, and when we die, part of what we are still has the memory of what we used to do when we were alive. So for my dog, she used to come up to bed every single night, and after she died, I think that part of her body was still doing this. So if you want to say that is a spirit or a soul or some kind of energy source, then I believe that. I also had a neighbor who unfortunately passed away the year before last. She was elderly and she had a coal fire. Every morning she would tend to her fire, and I could hear it through the wall. After my neighbor died, similarly, for a few weeks, I heard what sounded like her fire being tended to every morning at the same time or around the same time, and I half believed that it was my neighbor just doing her routines, whatever remains of ourselves once our physical form has ended. Because I've had quite a lot of dogs over my lifetime, I have noticed this happening again and again, and it's not just because I wish they were there. It really does seem like it is happening. I have learned to accept that it's nothing to be scared of. It is quite comforting to think that somehow we still exist, at least for a while, before our souls move on and become something, or before we are integrated back into the planet. Number 5, Ouija boards. Before I start this story, I want to advise anyone, if they are thinking about using a Ouija board for the first time, do not. It is something that I started to do when I was a child. The same childhood friend who I discussed in an earlier story got me interested in doing the Ouija board. We thought it would be fun. We thought it would be different. We thought it would be scary. Some of my school friends had also expressed an interest in Ouija boards, and there are 2 separate stories that I should address here. The first is that a Ouija board took place on school grounds one time. I was not involved in the Ouija board that time, but a group of my other friends were, and they did the Ouija board in a classroom. Halfway through that session, one girl came running out of the classroom with her arms in the air, literally, saying that she was never going to do a Ouija board ever again. When I asked what had happened, I was told that the glass had been spinning round at such a rate that no one in the room could control it. So my best friend and I decided to make up our own Ouija board using the back of a game board and Scrabble letters. We used just an ordinary glass and we started to dabble in the Ouija board. It worked very quickly, and 3 entities came through again and again. One entity was called Richard, and he came through alone on the board. The other 2 entities, I don't want to say their names, and I have not wanted to say their names since childhood. I'm going to give them pseudonyms because I am actually afraid of saying their names. So the 2 other spirits that came through were called Gaza and Cowboy. Their nicknames were very similar to this, and they sounded almost like gang names. They came through the board together, and basically as soon as they came through, they proceeded to abuse my friend and I by using foul language. They also said really horrific things about what was going to happen to us and what we should expect from our future, which was really terrifying. My friend and I started to do the Ouija board quite a lot, probably a lot more than we should have. One day I was in a maths class and I was supposed to be doing a certain exercise. When I looked down at my book, my whole 2 pages of the book were filled with the name Richard, and I had sat through the entire lesson and written the name Richard on my papers. At this point I became quite scared, and I told my mother that something was happening with the Ouija boards. She did not believe me, and she thought that I was being really ridiculous. I told her about Gaza and Cowboy, and she said that that sounded like made up stuff. But then I told her some of the language that they had been using, and she said that it was sort of 1970s type language, stuff that I wouldn't really know, and terms that I personally or my friend would not use. So she said, why don't we do a Ouija board together? She told me later that she was hoping that nothing would happen and that it would prove the fact that I was pushing the glass, or my friend had been pushing the glass. So we sat down together in the dining room of our house and we started to do the Ouija board. The glass moved very slowly at first, but then it started to speed up and my mother got really scared. Immediately, Gaza and Cowboy came through and they started to abuse us. started to say the same things over and over again. They used the F word, they used the C word, they told us to commit sexual acts. It felt very demonic, I have to be honest. Suddenly, about 5 minutes into doing the Ouija board, I felt horribly ill. I stood up and I fainted. I awoke and stood up and I tried to move and I was violently sick. Then I got up again and I ran outside to try and get some air, where I fainted again. It felt like something was rushing through my body and pulling me down, and it felt like I wasn't myself, basically. At this point, my mother said, "That is the last time you are ever to do a Ouija board," and I agreed. Later on in life, I looked back at what was going on, and my friend had a pretty traumatic life that I did not know about at the time. She was living in an abusive household, and I also was having some problems in the school environment, fitting in socially because I was a bit of a weird kid. When I look back, I look back with an open mind and say that this could have been the result of two troubled children getting together and accessing some part of their minds that is very dark and very strange and very abusive, and just letting that out. Another part of me says that this seemed so real, all seemed to distance the truth of it possibly being either me or my friend who were responsible, and it did point to the possibility that there could have been a real connection between us and the spirit world. I do not know what happened on the day that I became ill, but I do know that I think it's a dangerous thing to use the Ouija board, because I think that if it is accessing a spirit world and spirits like this come through, then it becomes very dangerous. There is a movie that I recently watched called Veronica, and it reminded me a lot of my own experience as a child with my best friend, and I just think that it's not worth the risk of having a bit of fun. I also think that it's very dangerous if you are in a place where you are a little bit emotionally disturbed to try to do a Ouija board, because I think that it could possibly access some area of your mind that you're not aware of, and I think that it brings it to the forefront, it brings it to the surface of things and becomes real in this Ouija board setting. So my advice for anyone out there is leave the Ouija boards alone and don't do them, it's not worth it. And that is probably the creepiest thing that ever happened to me. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have creepy stories of your own, leave them in the comments below, because I would love to read them. I love hearing what other people go through, how they process scary things, whether they believe them or not. Let me know in the comments. Also, you can like and subscribe if you want, and you can also follow me on Twitter at @thevloglady. That's it for now. See you later. Bye!